It was a bad week for South American dictators in their pajamas, Iranian regime members who also look like they're in their pajamas all the time, and anyone from the Obama administration that makes their money on a foreign policy podcast. Welcome to another stupid week. The prime minister of a country that suffered one of the worst attacks on its Jewish population in decades has decided, after being pressured, to set up a national commission of inquiry. Of course, I'm talking about Australia. You thought I was talking about someone else. No, you didn't. At first, he was like, yeah. And now, after outcry and public criticism, he's like, yeah. Must be nice. And on this side of government mismanagement, the chief of staff to communications minister and person who looks like he repairs cell phones for a living, Minister Shlomo Karhi, was convicted by a civil service disciplinary court for attacking a journalist. And I can't think of a better metaphor for the Israeli government than someone from the Ministry of Communications, the ministry in charge of dealing with public broadcasting and the news agencies, punching a journalist in the face. And in other Who Is That Person news, Gidon Saar landed in Somaliland for his first visit as an Israeli delegation since the Israeli recognition of Somaliland. And I'm sure everyone in Somaliland had only one burning question.
Who are you?
Who the is that? When's Bibi coming to visit? Gidon Saar is the Somaliland of foreign ministers. Except that, unlike Somaliland, nobody recognizes him, not even in Israel. In news that should be concerning, Gotliv has come in first place in a Likud poll that is not for the leadership. The Likud MK, who answers the question, what if prison wine was a person, had reportedly come in first in a non-leadership internal Likud poll, which isn't just horrifying some of us, it's worrying to Bibi as well. Earlier this month, it was reported that Netanyahu has privately complained that Gotliv's approach to Israeli politics, which essentially amounts to shrieking into her camera on Twitter in the backseat of a car every day, is costing Likud between 3 and 5 seats in national polls. Gotliv, on the other hand, has attributed the results to an endorsement from the Likud base of her way of doing things, saying, I can only say that I am grateful for the great trust I received from the right-wing voters in Likud who see the justice of my cause and theirs reflected in my work in the Knesset and in shifting the discourse towards right-wing governance and pursuing this path without apologizing. God help us all. Gotliv has publicly sparred with just about everyone via the front camera on her phone and has at various times said she'd make a great justice minister or defense minister, never mind the fact that she's been dragged out of high court hearings like an angry toddler more times than my actual toddler has been dragged out of anything. She's also revealed classified information publicly and tried to pass a law that would provide members of Knesset almost total immunity from prosecution for civil crimes. In finally some bad news somewhere else news, the German State Anti-Semitism Commissioner house was set on fire. German news reported that a home belonging to the German state of Brandenburg's, no way I said that right, Anti-Semitism Commissioner was targeted in an arson attack, and it's important to remember that in 2025, that is still a bad thing. Police say that the motives are still under investigation, but since it's Germany and the target's Anti-Semitism Commissioner, I really hope that no one worked too late into the night thinking about why someone would do such a thing. And back to our side of the world, Naftali Bennet promises the world. Former Prime Minister Naftali Bennet announced last Monday his plan for bribing a portion of the electorate into voting for him with a package of incentives that he said he will pass if elected as the next prime minister. And he had one image, some imagery that he really, really, really wanted to make sure that you knew.
אני מודיע כאן הערב, הפירמידה הישראלית מתהפכת. מהיום המשרתים בפסגה של הפירמידה, בפירמידה הישראלית יש 3 רמות, 3 שכבות. וככה אנחנו בעצם הופכים את הפירמידה בישראל.
The truth is, I can't really blame him for thinking that the voting Israeli public needs things explained to them very slowly with shapes that they learned in elementary school. The package includes subsidies on public utilities for active reservists, including and 1 million shekels for a first home purchase, pony or unicorn not included. Bennett got mocked, of course, for the 1 million shekel promise online by right-wing activists, but then again, Bibi promises security, and look how that went. He also promised lowering the cost of living, free childcare, and that nothing bad would happen if he was elected. So, before you criticize Bennet for making promises that seem a little bit far-fetched. Remember, at least they're promising to piss some money away in our direction this time. And in dishonesty news, Sarah Netanyahu has been touching up photos in the official archive, and the use of the word touch up is I don't think quite captures what she's doing. The PM's office this week is being criticized for releasing heavily edited photos of Bibi's wife, Sarah, and you be the judge. In recent weeks, you might have noticed, or you probably didn't because you have a life, Sarah Netanyahu is being added as a credit on photos released by the Prime Minister's office. The highly unusual credit, according to a source, is part of a compromise following complaints from the government press office, who objected to the official photos being released after they were edited for the First Lady, and let's just say to improve making it possible to look at her without crying. Ethical guidelines regarding official photos generally prohibit any manipulation that alters the content beyond minor color or brightness corrections. Changes of the type found in the recent PMO source are largely seen as undermining the credibility of Israel's photographic record. And let's take a look again. I mean, for fuck's sake, this is a real photo of her. And finally, in our top story for the week, the main story of the week should have been Iran, but it was suspiciously absent from a lot of the coverage on mainstream outlets, where the protests have been escalating for over a week, from basic complaints about economics with inflation on the rise and the devaluation of the currency in Iran to major protests against the regime itself. These are probably the biggest protests in over a decade in Iran that everyone's starting to think really has a chance of making some concrete changes in the country that has so far decided to create a nuclear program to wipe out Israel and export a lot of terrorism to the world. Journalists from all the major media outlets, though, have said that they've had difficult reporting on the protests because they don't have journalists or other sources on the ground, and it's become harder to understand what's going on ever since the internet in the country went down. But those same journalists had absolutely no problem covering Gaza when the IDF was not letting journalists into Gaza Strip, whether you think that policy was correct or not. And there was constant complaints about internet connectivity in the Strip. Then all of a sudden, there was plenty of trustworthy sources who happened to just work for Hamas, and the numbers of casualties by the Hamas Ministry of Health were published without question. The real reason why they aren't covering the protests is actually probably more to do with the fact that it would repudiate everything that they've been publishing for the last 20 years or so. Ever since the Obama administration created their little echo chamber to sell the Iran nuclear deal, mainstream outlets like the New York Times and CNN have insisted that on one message: Iran is not a bad country that does bad things. It's just a good country that's pushed to do bad things by the West. So what if they support Hezbollah? What if they supported Hezbollah, one of the largest terror armies in the world? So what if they support the Assad regime while it dropped barrels of chlorine on civilians? It happens to the best of us. So what if Iran supported the Houthis in Yemen So what if Iran supported the Houthis in Yemen during their civil war that ended up starving to death just 80,000 kids? What are you going to do? Happens to the best of us. Who is the New York Times editorial board to judge? In short, the mainstream media has tried to sell on the idea that Iran is just a good country that wants to be part of the family of nations if given it a chance. And the Iranian people themselves are telling them that's not the case. So when given the choice between changing all their coverage for the last 10 years or just pretending that they don't hear or see it, what do you think the option that they're going to go with? They're going to pretend to not hear it or see it. Even if the worst crimes that you have ever accused Israel of committing are true, they still pale in comparison to the misery and the evil that the Iran regime has invested billions of dollars spreading into the United States as well. But this wasn't worth reporting for a decade. Gaza was worth reporting. Even the BBC in Gaza, the BBC was reporting stories that they knew were wrong as they were reporting them, but they did it anyway because the goal isn't to inform, it's to push a message. Now, all of a sudden, with the Iranian protests, they've discovered their journalistic integrity. God forbid that the Iranian regime actually falls and the people of Iran get to take their first breaths of freedom in decades for some the first in their entire lives, what would it do to the careers of the journalists and professors who promised it was otherwise? Let's only hope we get to find out. Anyway, that's my show. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. If you didn't like it, I will try to earn your subscription and thumbs up next week, where I'll try again. Don't forget to share with your friends, family, and random bus drivers that you meet. Take care, everyone, and have a great week.